What about Ariana Grande?
Okay, no, fuck her.
You like Ariana Grande?
She's all right. She's good on her own.
I'm gonna fall on this.
She don't need
somebody catch me.
Plus, I don't want to sing with another woman. I ain't got nothing to say, okay, with a woman.
At 72, Chaka Khan should be celebrating a lifetime of music, love, and legendary success. Instead, her story has taken a heartbreaking turn that few ever saw coming. Behind the powerful voice and fearless stage presence lies a life marked by loss, battles fought in silence, and pain that never fully healed. What she has endured away from the spotlight reveals a truth so heavy it's leaving fans stunned and questioning how much one heart can survive. Chaka Khan's rise to fame wasn't some fairy tale come true. It was more like getting thrown into a storm she never really had time to prepare for. She grew up on the south side of Chicago, in a neighborhood where survival came first and dreams were a luxury. The streets were rough, full of gang activity, police sirens, and boarded-up buildings. By the age of 11, she had already joined a gang, not because she wanted trouble, but because walking around alone in her area was just too dangerous. She learned how to walk tough, how to hide fear, how to protect herself. But underneath all that, she was still just a little girl trying to find a way out. That way out came through music. Her voice wasn't just good, it was powerful, raw, unforgettable. Even as a teenager, people would stop and stare when she sang. At 16, she joined the Afro Arts Theater, a place where young black artists could express themselves freely. But even there, freedom came with its own risks. She was surrounded by older musicians, activists, and grown men who noticed her, not just for her voice, but for how young and impressionable she was. That kind of attention, especially for a teenage girl, could be confusing and dangerous. By 17, she joined the band Rufus, and everything changed. One minute, she was just a girl from Chicago. The next, she was traveling the country, singing in clubs, getting pulled into the fast-moving world of the music industry. She was only 20 when Rufus blew up. Her voice was on every radio station, fans were screaming her name, and people started calling her a star. But behind the scenes, it was a different story. She was constantly surrounded by men who wanted something from her. Producers, managers, label execs, all treating her more like a product than a person. Everyone wanted to shape her, control her, own her. No one really asked how she felt. The pressure was nonstop. Expectations piled up. And the only way to keep up with the schedule and the stress was to find something to take the edge off. That's how cocaine showed up. At first, it seemed normal. Everyone in the industry was using it. But for Chaka, it quickly became a crutch. Then came heroin, and that's when the real spiral began. Some say she was introduced to it by a boyfriend. Others think someone gave it to her on purpose, to keep her hooked, to make her easier to manage. Whatever the reason, it took over her life fast. She was barely into her 20s, already worn down by fame, surrounded by people twice her age, and caught in a lifestyle that didn't care if she lived or died, as long as she kept singing. By the time the world saw Chaka Khan as a legend, her private life was already falling apart. On stage, she looked untouchable, confident, powerful, bigger than life. But once the lights went off and the doors closed behind her, the addiction took over completely. What started years earlier as a way to survive pressure had now become the center of her life. Drugs were no longer something she used after shows. They were something she needed just to function, to wake up, to sleep, to feel normal. Cocaine was everywhere, and alcohol became constant. But heroin was the real problem, quiet, deadly, and controlling. It slowly wrapped itself around her daily routine. She could go from being fully present one moment to completely gone the next. Days blurred together, nights stretched endlessly. She slept during the day and came alive after dark, chasing the next hit like it was the only thing that mattered. Lying became automatic. Promises were made and broken without thought. Addiction stopped feeling like a problem and started feeling like life itself. The worst part was that this didn't just affect her. It invaded her home. Her children grew up inside the chaos. Her daughter learned early how to read the mood in her mother's footsteps, how to stay quiet when things felt off, how to ignore what shouldn't have been normal. Rolled up bills, needles, smoke-filled rooms. These weren't shocking to her kids. They were routine. Childhood became about surviving the house, not feeling safe in it. By the early 1980s, things were clearly out of control. Neighbors noticed the yelling, the long silences, the strange behavior. Child services got involved. Reports described an unsafe environment, emotional instability, suspected substance abuse. For Chaka, this was a breaking moment. She temporarily lost custody of her child, something that cut deeper than any headline ever could. Fans were told it was a misunderstanding. Behind closed doors, it was pure devastation. The addiction had crossed a line that couldn't be ignored anymore. Still, even that wasn't enough to stop it. The mid and late 1980s passed in a haze of tours, hotel rooms, blackouts, and disappearances. She would vanish for days, then come back pretending nothing happened. Her health declined. Her money slipped through her fingers. Friendships faded because people didn't know which version of her they would get. Inside the home, her children watched their mother slowly turn into someone they didn't recognize. The most terrifying moment came in 1988. One morning, her teenage son walked into the kitchen and found her unconscious on the floor, foam around her mouth, skin cold, not breathing right. Panic exploded in the room. Someone screamed. Someone called 911. Paramedics arrived and immediately knew what they were dealing with. For her son, that image never went away. For Chaka, surviving that overdose forced a truth she could no longer deny. She wasn't just hurting herself. She was traumatizing her children. The industry buried the incident. No headlines, no scandal. She was still valuable, so she was protected. But inside, her family was cracking. Guilt became overwhelming. And instead of pushing her toward healing, it fed the addiction even more. From 1990 to 1994, she entered rehab again and again. 7 times in 4 years. Malibu, Santa Monica, Arizona, New York. Sometimes she stayed weeks. Sometimes she left after days. Each time, there was hope. Each time, there was relapse. Doctors later said she came close to death more than once. Her body was exhausted, her immune system weakened, her memory fractured. Some days she woke up unsure of where she was. Still, she was pushed onto stages, cleaned up backstage, given excuses to feed the public. She's sick. She lost her voice. She has exhaustion. The truth stayed hidden while the damage at home continued. There were moments when even music stopped helping. Studio sessions ended in tears. Withdrawals made it impossible to sing. Family gatherings turned into arguments. Trust disappeared. Her children carried anger, fear, and confusion they didn't know how to process. Addiction didn't just steal time. It stole safety, stability, and trust. By 1996, Chaka stood at a crossroads. She knew the path she was on ended one way: death. She had seen it too many times. Friends, peers, legends. This time, she fought harder. She survived the addiction physically, but survival came with a cost. The emotional damage inside her family didn't disappear just because the drugs did. That was the truth no award or comeback could fix. Addiction didn't just try to kill Chaka Khan, it reshaped her children's lives, rewrote their memories, and left scars that success could never erase. By the early 2000s, Chaka Khan had already survived things that would have broken most people: addiction, rehab, family damage, public pressure. She was still standing. But then came the moment that truly shattered her from the inside. In 2004, her life split into before and after, and nothing was ever the same again. That year, her son became the center of a murder case. A teenage argument ended with a young woman dead, and suddenly Chaka wasn't a legend, a star, or a voice of a generation. She was a mother sitting in shock, trying to understand how her family had ended up inside a nightmare. Police lights, court documents, headlines she never wanted to read, cameras waiting for her reactions. The pain was immediate and brutal. She didn't sleep. She replayed every moment of her past, blaming herself for things she couldn't change. The addiction years, the instability, the chaos her children grew up in. She kept asking herself the same question over and over. If her life had been different, would this have happened at all? That question followed her everywhere. She did everything she could to protect her son. She sold possessions she once believed she'd keep forever: jewelry, art, memories. She drained accounts built from decades of work. She hired the best lawyers she could find. Money disappeared faster than she could earn it. None of it brought peace. The trial dragged on for years, slow and exhausting. Sitting in court, she felt smaller every day, like a ghost watching her own life collapse. When her son was finally found not guilty in criminal court, the relief didn't last. A civil lawsuit followed. This time, the standard was different: probability. not certainty. Responsibility, not proof. The verdict went against her family. Over $1 million in damages, a number she couldn't fully pay. The legal fight ended, but the damage only deepened. That was the moment her body gave up. Stress, guilt, fear. It all landed at once. To survive, she turned to prescription painkillers. At first, they were meant to help her sleep, calm her nerves, stop the panic. But soon, they became another trap. Addiction didn't come back loudly, it came quietly. Pills instead of needles. Doctors instead of dealers. But the result was the same. She drifted, she disconnected. She moved through her home like someone lost inside her own life. While she was falling apart, the industry wasn't waiting to catch her. It was already pulling away. Behind smiles and polite words, things changed. Invitations slowed down. Opportunities disappeared. People started calling her difficult. Not broken, not grieving, just difficult. It was easier than admitting she needed support. The betrayals hurt more because they came from people she thought were her peers. Other women in the industry, other legends. There was tension, competition, quiet rivalry that never had to be spoken out loud. The industry loves to pit women against each other, especially black women with power. There was never room for two queens. And when Chaka became vulnerable, that room closed completely. When Whitney Houston died in 2012, it hit Chaka harder than anyone expected. It wasn't just grief, it was recognition. She saw the same story. The same pressure, the same silence behind the glamour. Whitney's death felt like a warning she barely survived. After that, something inside her shut down. She stopped trusting the industry. She stopped believing it could ever protect anyone. By the mid-2000s, she was being pushed aside quietly. No big scandal, no dramatic exit, just erasure. Younger artists were given priority. Promoters saw her as risky. Executives saw her as inconvenient. She would show up ready to perform only to find her time cut short or her role minimized without explanation. No apologies, no respect, just silence. What hurt the most wasn't losing fame, it was losing faith. Faith in people, faith in sisterhood, faith that loyalty meant anything in that world. She had given everything, her voice, her health, her youth, and when she needed understanding, she got distance instead. By the time she stepped back, she wasn't angry anymore. She was tired of fighting, tired of explaining, tired of being strong for everyone else while falling apart inside. The tragedy wasn't just the case, or the pills, or the betrayals. It was realizing that the same industry that lifted her up had no problem watching her break, as long as it didn't have to look too closely. That was the moment Chaka Khan truly withdrew, not because she wanted to disappear, but because staying visible hurt too much. By the time Chaka Khan reached her 60s, something had changed deep inside her. Something that had nothing to do with music, fame, or even addiction. It was something quieter, something harder to explain. She was just tired. Not the kind of tired that goes away after a nap or a vacation. This was a soul-level exhaustion. The kind that settles in after you've spent decades fighting battles no one else really sees, while the world just keeps asking for more. In 2016, she made a decision that surprised even the people closest to her. She checked into rehab again, not for cocaine, not for heroin this time, but for prescription pills, painkillers, anti-anxiety meds, sleeping tablets. They'd slowly taken over her life after everything with her son, the court cases, the depression, the pressure to keep pretending she was okay when she wasn't. These pills had become her way of surviving the silence after the storm. Rehab was different now. She wasn't the young woman entering for the first time, scared and angry. She was older, fragile, reflective. She cried a lot, not out of shame, but out of sheer grief for everything she'd lost. Time, people, peace, and parts of herself she'd never get back. When she came out, clean again, she didn't rush into anything. No flashy comeback, no big interviews. She didn't owe anyone that anymore. She had nothing left to prove. This time, it wasn't about restarting her career, it was about surviving. So she stepped back. Far back. Chaka moved into a quiet house near Woodland Hills, a suburban part of Los Angeles tucked away from the chaos of the city and the music world. The house wasn't huge or flashy. It wasn't about showing off anymore. It was about safety, about having space to breathe without being watched. The curtains were almost always drawn. Delivery drivers would leave packages at the gate. Neighbors rarely saw her, and when they did, It was just a glimpse. Maybe walking slowly in the backyard. Maybe watering the same tree she'd planted years ago. She wasn't hiding. She was protecting what little piece she had left. Friends say she started cutting people off slowly. Not out of bitterness, but out of fear. Fear that one wrong phone call, one wrong person from the past, could pull her back into old habits. She'd been through too much to risk falling again, so she set boundaries, strong ones. Even family had to call first. Visits became shorter, heavier. Conversations stayed surface level because anything deeper brought up pain. She didn't want to keep talking about the past. The past had taken enough. People called it disappearing. But to Chaka, it didn't feel like that. It felt like finally being allowed to breathe. Then came 2020, the year the whole world went quiet. COVID shut everything down. Everyone was suddenly living in isolation. But for Chaka, this wasn't a shock. It was familiar. It was how she'd already been living for years. While other celebrities went live on Instagram, performed from their kitchens, or posted videos to stay connected, Chaka stayed silent. No live streams, no check-ins, no updates, nothing. Fans started to worry. Rumors spread online. Had she relapsed? Was she in the hospital? Was she dead? But the truth was simpler. She was alone. Deeply, purposefully alone. Silence for her was both a comfort and a curse. Some days it felt peaceful. No cameras, no managers, no pressure, just stillness. Other days it felt like drowning. Too much space, too many memories, and no one around to help carry them. Her home was filled with photographs, but they weren't decorations. They were ghosts, pictures of family members who had died, friends she'd lost, people she once trusted but couldn't anymore. She'd sit on the couch, staring at them, not saying much, just remembering, just feeling everything that was too heavy to speak out loud. When people did visit, and only a few still did, they described the same scene. Chaka sitting in silence, maybe smiling for a moment, but never fully. Her voice softer, her eyes tired. Not the tired from working, but the kind of tired that settles in after years of heartbreak. She wasn't angry at the world, she wasn't blaming anyone, but she was done pretending it didn't hurt. The industry, meanwhile, kept moving forward. Younger artists filled the charts. Award shows kept happening. Tributes were made. Sometimes they mentioned her, sometimes they didn't. And even when they did, the calls stopped coming. She was no longer asked to perform at big events. Her name was used more for legacy than participation. A legend, yes, but a quiet one, a distant one. She noticed. Of course, she noticed. It wasn't about ego. It was about being erased, slowly, gently, like she was being pushed further and further into the background, as if the world had gotten everything it needed from her and moved on. It hurt, but not in a loud way. It was more like a quiet ache that sat in her chest and never left. By 2022, the silence had become a part of her. It shaped her days. She rarely left the house unless absolutely necessary. No more studio visits unless it was something she believed in completely. No more business meetings. No more chasing collaborations. She'd learned the hard way that most offers weren't real anyway. Just people trying to use her name, not honor her story. Inside, she struggled with something she never talked about publicly. The fear that her children would carry the same pain she had. That addiction, trauma, and loss would pass down like an unwanted inheritance. She saw the patterns. She saw how damage moved from one generation to the next. And she carried that fear every single day, not just as guilt, but as a weight she couldn't lift. The years between 2023 and 2024 only made her world smaller. Some old friends passed away. Others drifted. A few stopped calling altogether. Whether it was because of distance or discomfort, she didn't know. She didn't ask. She just let it happen. Because by then, she had accepted something most people refuse to. Sometimes survival comes with loneliness. She no longer talked about the future. The future was too uncertain, too far away, and honestly, she was just tired of chasing it. She talked about quiet things, about wanting rest, about sleeping better, about the kind of peace that doesn't come from awards or applause, but from finally letting go. And what makes it all so tragic isn't just that she pulled away. It's that she felt like she had no choice. The music industry had taken everything it wanted from her, her youth, her brilliance, her body, her spirit, and gave very little back. Fame gave her a platform, yes, but it also gave her scars. The spotlight was beautiful, but it burned. So now, at 72, Chaka Khan lives in silence. Her voice, still powerful, isn't heard as often. Her face, still beautiful, is rarely seen. And the woman behind the legend? She walks through her quiet house surrounded by trophies and memories, not seeking attention, not chasing relevance, but simply existing, breathing, surviving. She's not bitter. She's just done. Done with pretending. Done with pleasing. Done with pain. And in that quiet corner of Los Angeles, behind closed curtains and locked gates, the Queen of Funk lives not as an icon, not as a headline, but as a woman who gave the world her soul and is now just trying to keep what's left of it intact.